Hi Keepa folks, I'm Pete58 with Shadow the Hedgehog, and today we're doing a video. It's a bad miniseries review. I normally do bad movie reviews, but I decided to do this one because it's kind of one of my favorites. It's the miniseries of It from 1990. A lot of people give this miniseries some flack. There's a lot of people, it seems like, that hate it. They think it's really bad. I don't, and I'm going to give you a review of it. And before I get started, for those of you who don't want to see it, the miniseries, maybe they just want to see the movie, but they've heard so many bad things about the miniseries, they're just, I'm not going to go see it for shit. And well, let me just point out this. This is the book of Stephen King's It. This is the, I think, when was this? I think it was printed in 2000 something. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when, but this is one I bought about 10 years ago. Signet. And for those of you who say, I don't want to watch the miniseries because it's really inconsistent and stuff like that, I'm going to take two excerpts out of this book. I'm going to read them to you real quick. And to show you that, maybe you shouldn't be such a Puritan if you're really, well, I'm not going to, I just don't want to see it. I heard it sucks. Let me just show you something in this book. This is in page, let's see, page 150. This is Mike Hanlon talking to Albert Carson. And Mike Hanlon briefly goes into his history. This is Mike Hanlon. I was born here in Derry Home Hospital and attended Derry Elementary School. It's on page 150. I'll point it out to you right here if you can see it. I'm not sure, but it says it right there on page 150 that he went to Derry Elementary School. Now I'm going to jump ahead, and this is a little bit further in the book. Now it starts at 633, at the very end of page 633. The others in the Losers Club, knew Mike by sight in a town where he was the only Negro child. It would have been strange, 634 now, if they had not. But that was all. Because Mike didn't, I repeat, Mike didn't go to Derry Elementary School. That's on page 634. So, if Stephen King can make an innocent mistake like that, with his book, I think it's important that, people should, if they haven't seen the miniseries, they're just adamantly against it, try and bear that page in mind, those 2 pages in mind, and that even, the master himself can, not be perfect. So that's why I urge you to at least give this miniseries a view. It was pretty good. There's a lot of inconsistencies. It stars a cast of characters, the Losers Club, adults and children, Harry Anderson, Dennis Christopher, Richard Masur, Annette O'Toole, Tim Reed, John Ritter, Richard Thomas, and of course Tim Curry as Pennywise. And then the children's cast is Jonathan Brandis, Brandon Crane, Adam Friesel, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, Seth Green, we all know him, Ben Heller, Emily Perkins, and Marlon Taylor. Now, the new It movie that's coming out, it will probably be big, and there'll be a lot of reviews of it. So I think a lot of people will start giving this miniseries a chance again. They just want to see how it kind of all started. Now, if it's a miniseries, and if you watch it on TV, if it airs on TV still, I don't know, it would take you 4 hours to watch. That's because there's commercials and all that. If you got the DVD, it would take you 3 hours to watch it. It's about 3 hours and 6 minutes on DVD. So if you find a DVD, I don't know if there's a Blu-ray out for it. There probably will be soon. Get it, because it's about, it takes longer to watch, the first Lord of the Rings movie, I think, So don't let the fact that it's, a mini-series bother you. Though, like I said, the first new It movie will probably be longer than, 3 hours if there's, like, an unrated version. But, let's begin our review. The movie, or the mini-series, starts off with Mike Hanlon. Just like in the book, he gives each of the characters a phone call. It's 1990, that's the present in the movie. or in the miniseries. In the movie, I think that's the past, like '89 or something. But in the miniseries, it was made in 1990, so that's the present. And Mike first gives Stuttering Bill a call, and we get to see Georgie's death. He did not witness it, but we get to see it anyway because it's Bill's flashback. But we do get to see the photo album incident with the blood that no one sees. Pretty scary, you know. The acting isn't all that bad. A lot of people say only Tim Curry is the only bright spot in the miniseries. I don't think that's true. He's great. He's great, and he's scary as shit. I'm not scared of clowns, but it's a scary character. Anyway, so Bill gets the phone call. He flashes back, and honey, Audra, his wife, the movie star that he's married to now, he's a successful writer. He's got to split town and go to Derry, and he warns his wife, "Don't follow me." And so then we go to Ben. He gets the next phone call. He was the fat kid, and he becomes a successful architect. And when he gets his phone call, we get a pretty good flashback of when the first time he meets Beverly and Henry Bowers and his friends and Bill and Eddie and, of course, Pennywise. His father, Pennywise takes the shape of his father, and it's kind of a creepy scene. Now, the next phone call goes to Beverly Marsh. A lot of these characters, they were changed drastically for the miniseries. If you haven't read the book, yeah, I'd be surprised if you hadn't, if you're going to watch the miniseries. But if you read the book, I mean, it's brutal. I mean, almost every character is some kind of homicidal maniac outside of the Losers Club. I mean, it's like seems like everyone has a homicidal urge, and Beverly's boyfriend in the miniseries in the book was actually her husband. But in the miniseries, we only see him once. They get into a fight, and she just leaves him, and that's it. We don't see him. After that, we flash back to her thinking about her father and getting smacked upside the head. After that, she meets Richie and Stan. They build this dam, and she also gets a poem, mysteriously from somebody. She doesn't know who it is, but she thinks it's Bill. And it was the poem is originally from Ben, and it is, there's a whole little love triangle there with Ben, Bill, and Bev. It's not as pronounced in the miniseries. Like I said, they had to alter a lot of stuff. I mean, there is a love between these two guys to Beverly, but it's it's made for TV, so they can't really intensify it too much. Because it's a lot of crazy stuff. It's everything's all the characters. In the book, they're children, so it's complicated for them, and it's kind of hard to get that, pre-adolescent love feeling in a mini-series and do it in under an hour and a half, because the first part was them as kids, sort of. You got them as adults, and they would flash back. It's not going to be like the movie, which appears to be just them as kids, and then the second one will be them as adults. The miniseries did it like in the book, they're flashing back. So it's really hard to get those complicated feelings in a TV miniseries in under 2 hours, because that's like commercials too, and try and get it, the way the book did. It's difficult. Now, the next character we meet that gets a phone call is Eddie Kaspbrak, the asthmatic boy. Another character that was altered when he was an adult. In the book, his mother had died, and he was married to a woman that was just like his mother. In the miniseries, he's still living with his mother, and he even admits at the end that he's a virgin. He's never even been with a woman. Which, if you read the book, you can almost believe that, because his marriage was kind of just, like, weird. But his scene in which he encounters Pennywise is probably considered the scariest scene in the whole miniseries. He's in the shower, and he's by himself. It's the school shower, so it's this real big, intimidating place. And all of a sudden, the shower heads start turning on, and they start coming at him, and it's fun. It's like scary though, and he just gets freaked out, and he jumps in this corner, and you see this little drain, and these little hands come out, and they just go, and you just see Pennywise just kind of pop his head off, and he's like, "Yep, girly boy," That's a lot of people I consider that the scariest scene in the book, probably scarier than the scene in the drain, where you see Georgie get his arm ripped off. Well, you don't see his arm get ripped off, but you see it just about to happen. Like I said, it's a TV miniseries, and it's from 1990, and so they had to cut out a lot of violence, a lot of messed up stuff. I mean, like I said, if you haven't read the book, the miniseries doesn't do it justice. There's just so much to it. I mean, you have no idea. Like I said, if you haven't read the book, you really should, and then give the miniseries a try, or do it the other way. It don't really matter, because to me, I like the miniseries, but the book, of course, is 1,000 times better. Now, the next phone call goes to Richie Tozier, Trashmouth, played as a kid by Seth Green, and as an adult by Harry Anderson. We get a flashback of him meeting all the kids in the Barrens, and then Officer Nell, and then they're in school, and then we get the flashback of him getting attacked by the teenage werewolf, Michael, from the Michael Landon movie, and then he sees Pennywise. Another problem with the inconsistencies is in the book, it's summertime, school's let out the whole time. But throughout in the miniseries, when they're kids, they keep mentioning, it's a great summer, and then the next day they're in school. One minute Eddie's like, this is the best summer ever, and then the next day he's it's a shower scene in school. So, there's really strange inconsistencies. I understand there's supposed to be inconsistencies. It's a miniseries, but that's just an odd one. It didn't matter if it was going to be summer in the miniseries. They could have just left it out completely, because it didn't really seem to be a point to anything. Because they kept showing him in school anyway. I mean, but they kept saying, oh, it's a great summer. Now let's carry to get to school. Very odd that. I figured, I didn't really know what to make of it. But before we get the Stan's phone call, we flash back to Mike and how he meets the Losers Club, and then they have the apocalyptic rock fight. Not quite as dramatic as in the book, and probably not as in the movie. But like I said, it's a TV miniseries. It aired on ABC, and they couldn't make it too crazy. There's a lot of shit in the book that just that they probably can't even put in the movie, for real. So the rock fight wasn't as dramatic, but we get another cool scene with Mike Hanlon showing his father's photo album to the rest of the losers, and we get another scary Pennywise scene. It's a shame he couldn't be in the movie more, or in the miniseries more, Tim Curry. It's more of like, even in the credits it says special appearance by Tim Curry, because he doesn't make too many appearances throughout. He'll do like, you'll hear his voice, or a stuntman will be dressed up in another costume. Tim Curry was not the Wolfman, he was not the Hag in Mrs. Kirsch's apartment. They used different actors and stuntmen for that. So generally, when you saw Pennywise, or when you saw Tim Curry, it was only him as Pennywise, or you would hear his voice. Now, they had asked him to reprise his role for the movie. He said no. I could think of one probably pretty good reason. In the original miniseries, when they offered him the role of Pennywise, he said no, he didn't want it. Now, a couple of years before the 1990 miniseries, Tim Curry had done a movie called Legend. Also starred Tom Cruise and Mia Sara. That big horn demon, that was Tim Curry, and he had to put on a lot of makeup, a lot of headgear, and during filming he had a claustrophobic attack. I mean, he had to rip it off his face. So when they offered him this role of Pennywise, and they explained to him what he would be wearing, which was this big thing around his head, he was initially reluctant, and he was, he didn't like that. He didn't like doing a lot of makeup stuff. And that's understandable, I mean, he's a good actor too, and it's a shame that a lot of people don't know that he was in other movies because he's wearing so much crap on his face, but he's really good in Legend, and he's really good in this, but he almost didn't take the original role, but he did wind up taking it, and I think they kind of worked with him to make sure that he wouldn't have any problems like he did in the movie Legend. Before the flashback for Mike ends, we get a stuttering Bill as a little kid begging the losers to help him kill Pennywise the clown. He's been killing, lots of other kids, not just his brother, but that's Bill's reason for wanting to kill it, is because it killed his brother Georgie. Now, we go to the final phone call. This is the end of the first part of the miniseries, to Stan the Manuris. His flashback is the Bullseye tryouts, and then they go to the final fight as kids against Pennywise. They go in, and Henry Bowers and friends, they sneak in behind him. Two of his friends, Belch and Victor, get killed by Pennywise. Henry just gets white hair, like, ugh, does one of these dumb faces, and basically Stan runs away. Pennywise follows him, and then they get to the losers, but Beverly is able to kill him, kind of, not exactly kill him for good, but they kill him with silver slugs, and he goes down in the drain. Afterwards, they're still kids. Before the flashback ends, they make a promise that if it isn't truly dead, they will come back. And they make that promise, including Stan, who, however, at the end we see has broken that promise by taking his own life. And that's the end of the first part of the miniseries. It's a two-parter, like I said, and without commercials, it's an hour and 33 minutes, and you watch both in like 3 hours. I think Dark Knight was longer than that, or The Dark Knight Rises was longer than that, and I didn't care for The Dark Knight Rises. I'd rather spend 3 hours watching it, the miniseries. There's a lot of inconsistencies. Obviously, as I said, there's no standpipe. It was destroyed at some point in time before they were ever born. The summer thing, 1 minute it's summer, the next minute they're going to gym class. The characters, Ben, as a kid and as an adult, they take out the mummy story. Well, they kind of take it out, but they have it happen to Stan, and for Stan it happens very briefly and towards the end of part 2. With Bev, she's not married to Tom in the miniseries. They're just living together, and she just bugs out, and that's it. We never see him again. In the book, he tries and kills her. He follows her to Derry. Her dad altered, not to a real great degree. They make him come off as a drunk, but in the book, he was like a stone-cold sober man. He was creepy, but he wasn't a drunk or anything like that. Mike, some of his stuff was altered, not as to a great degree as Eddie. Eddie's story was greatly altered. There is no leper. There is no Myra that he marries. He's still living with his mom, even though in the book, by the time he's grown up, she had died. So, like I said, there's a lot of... they had to change a lot of stuff. I mean, everything that happens to these characters, a lot of it is pretty graphic beforehand, especially with Beverly and her husband. In the book, it's brutal, man. I mean, they really almost kill each other. So, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And like I said, if even the book can have mistakes, then the miniseries can too. And just give it a watch. Now, we start with part 2. It's present day. In the miniseries, it was 1960 when they're kids, and now it's back 1990. And we see Bill. He arrives. He visits Georgie's grave, and he sees Pennywise. And, it's a pretty good scene. A little creepy, in the cemetery. And good acting all around from, I think it's Richard Thomas. He plays the adult Stuttering Bill. He seems pretty passionate in that scene. He's really hurting. He leaves the cemetery, and he gets reacquainted with Mike. Richie comes into town. He goes to the library, and he has an experience that Ben had in the book as an adult. It happens to Richie in the miniseries, but there's no vampire. It's just Pennywise fucking with him in the library. It's, like I said, for some reason they just... certain stuff, I'm sure they had good reason to change around stuff like that. They seem to do it an awful lot. I don't know. That didn't bother me too much. Certain things I didn't understand why they did it. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. I just didn't know what to make of them switching certain things that happen to certain characters. I think if they, they could have just kept certain things the same. Not everything. I know they couldn't have the giant bird, or the Dead Boys, or budget and time restraints, and the facts that it's it's an ABC in the year 1990. CGI just wasn't quite there yet, I'm afraid. Then we go to Eddie, who's arriving into town, and then he sees Mr. Keene, and he gets again another scene. He speaks to the drugstore guy, who's the guy who used to run it back when he was a kid, and what doesn't make any sense is that the scene that takes place happened in the book, but it happened between Mike Hanlon and Albert Carson. And for some reason, they just took that whole scene and they gave it to Keene and Eddie Kaspbrak in the present, 1990, and then they just added the asthma stuff in, and I just didn't get that. They could have just had the asthma stuff. They didn't need to take parts of Mike Hanlon and Albert Carson's story. I don't understand why, because a lot of crazy stuff happened for Eddie that they could have just put in there, but they took something that happened with Mike Hanlon, and they made it so that it was Pennywise causing it, because Mike Hanlon gets this warning from an old-timer telling him, beware. But in the miniseries, it's Norbert Keene, getting possessed by Pennywise and trying to hurt Eddie and grabbing him and saying, "Beware, you girly boy." I just didn't make any sense. They didn't have to do it that way. I mean, they're already changing so much. Some stuff they just made up. I just didn't know why they didn't keep doing that. Why are they? Because it's a little confusing, at least it was for me. I don't know. We see Ben. He comes into town, he visits the Barons, and he gets to see Pennywise again, and then gets scared by a homeless guy. It was a little funny. And, then finally Bev comes into town, and another great scene. She goes to visit her dad. She goes to this apartment, and she rings a bell thinking it's Marsh, but it says Kirsch, and this old woman invites her in, and it's, that's another really, really good scene, is her getting chased out by the hag. That's another one of my favorites, because it's genuinely a scary scene. The teacup full of blood was pretty gory. The book, it was shit. It was liquid shit in the cup, not blood. But like I said, ABC, it's 1990. A cup of shit just ain't gonna work, So after all the characters get introduced back into the story, they cut to Bill's wife, Audra. She gets into a fight with her boss and warns her, you better not leave, or I'm going to make you my enemy, or whatever, because show business and all that shit. But she doesn't listen. She books a flight to the United States, to Derry. And then we cut back to the losers again, grown up, and they're having their dinner, trying to remember everything. And they start discussing the murders, and then they start discussing Henry Bowers. And then we cut to him, who is still locked up. Since the murders, they put him in an insane asylum. He's been there since the murders happened, since 1960. And he's all white-haired, he's all chubby, he's really pathetic looking. And Pennywise keeps visiting him in the ghost moon up in the sky. Actually, in the book, it's a ghost moon. In the miniseries, it's just the moon. Henry wasn't bothered by the moon at night. He was bothered by the moon during the day, because it looked like a ghost, like there was a ghost face on it. But again, I guess they just kind of had to do that. They didn't go too crazy with changing that part of the story, with him being in the hospital and how he got out. They changed it a little, but not to any greater degree than I guess they had to. Because they really, he was a major villain. Like I said, a lot of the villains were played by multiple actors and stuntmen. Pennywise was just the clown. They had to have, a lot of people depend on for the, for the scary stuff. Not just Pennywise and, Teenage Werewolf. They needed Henry, who was a real thing, and it was very scary. Especially when he starts getting freaked out about the moon. Now. We cut back to the dinner, and then there's the great fortune cookie scene. Each one of them opens it up to something gory and horrific, pretty close to what was in the book. Not 100%, but damn near close. So it's considering there's a lot of stuff that they could have messed up that they didn't. It's still a great scene. They get freaked out, and then they leave the diner. Then they go to the library. That's where they find out Stan has committed suicide. In the book, they had already known by then, before they even got to dinner. They had found out that he was dead. But in the miniseries, they have dinner, and they're still waiting for Stan, and they try and call him, and they find out that he had committed suicide after Mike's first call. Then they start recounting, stories that that Stan had told him first. Bill recounts Stan's encounter with the mummy, and then next we see Eddie, who once again, we were in school the other day, and and we started talking about it. It's like school, in the last scene it was summer, just a lot of things didn't make any sense to me. At least not time consistency wise. I mean, maybe the scene that we know now. When Bill recounts his story with Stan after they find out he's dead, he said it was August, and then Eddie picks up a story and he says it was when school was in. So maybe that happened in that order. Stan telling Bill his story, it was August, which Bill said it was August, and then Eddie saying, oh yeah, and in school, Stan told me this, he wanted to be in its deadlights. So there is a little. I'm guessing that's the consistency, that it's supposed to be one right after the other. Like, it was August, and then the following month school's back in, and he tells them, oh hey, this is what happened. See, because they just go to different scenes. They're not saying, oh, August 1958, and then it's October 1957. You're not getting any of that. You're just going from one scene to the next, to the next, to the next. And you just see that they're kids, but you don't know specifically when it is. Is it the summer? Are they in school still? Unless you've really read the book, you're kind of lost. You're not sure, what's going on and when it's going on, other than it's, in the early 60s or late 50s. Now, after all that, we cut back to Henry. He escapes through the help of Pennywise and gets out of the mental institution, and after that they have the losers. They have a Pennywise encounter. They get freaked out and they decide to leave the library, and they rendezvous, I guess, at the townhouse where they were all staying at. In the book, they just stayed in the library until the very end of the night, and Mike was by himself, and he gets stabbed by Henry Bowers. Well, in the miniseries, they all go to the townhouse, all 6 of them, and they're telling stories. And here's one story that I wanted to throw in there. It's John Ritter. He plays the late John Ritter. He plays the grown-up Ben Hanscom. In it, he tells the story that is in the book about how Ben, who was the fat kid, he lost all the weight. John Ritter, a few things I do know. When he had taken the role of Ben Hanscom, he read the book. He got a copy of it and he read it cover to cover. Like I said, to me, that's great. He really wanted to get into the character, and he did, and I'm going to prove it. Because in the original script, they were not going to explain how Ben lost all the weight. They were going to just cut it out. I mean, that's the stuff they would cut out major important stuff. Kind of because they had to, but they didn't have time. And John Ritter, he convinced I think it was the director. He said, just let me get the story. I really think you should keep the story in. And if you watch the scene, you'll see he's kind of telling it quickly. The reason why is because the director said, okay, we're short on time, so if you got to do it, you got to do it fast. You got to do it in a take. And that's why when he's telling the story, it seems almost kind of rushed. It's because he actually was. And that was because it was important for him to conclude that story. He felt, he wanted to portray the character as best as he could. He had read the whole book, and that's a shame he died, because, to me, that's good acting, Even though it's just a miniseries, he wanted to get the whole character. And I think that's important. I think that's why people should give this miniseries a chance. Is because, Harry Anderson, who plays Richie Tozier as an adult, and Seth Green, who plays him as a child, throughout the book, it's a scary book, but what's always fun is hearing Richie's smart mouth. I mean, a lot of the times I'd be reading this scary-ass book, and I would laugh my ass off from something Richie said. I saw a trailer from the new It movie, and there was a line Richie said that made me laugh my ass off. And then in this miniseries, they got Seth Green, who, you know, was pretty funny as the Richie kid, and Harry Anderson, who was fucking phenomenally funny as Richie as an adult. All these scary things are happening, and every once in a while Richie will say something and it'll make you kind of laugh, you know. And that made me feel good, because then it reminded me of the book, because the book did the same thing. Every once in a while you'd have Richie give this crazy smart-ass comment that would make you laugh. And I'm glad, that's why I hope when they do the remake of the second, of part 2, maybe they'll hire a comedian. I would love to see that. Maybe have like Seth Rogen or something play Richie, or just, you know, if they did that, I would be down with that. If they hired a comedian to play Richie in the next It movie, I think that would definitely work, because, you know, Harry Anderson, who played Richie in the miniseries, he was a comedian. He still is a comedian. He does comedy, you know, and, you know, that would be perfect. If they did a comedian for the It remake when they're adults, that hopefully comes out, if this one does, the first one does good, I really hope they include an actual comedian. I think that would definitely work. Now we go next to they remember cleaning the drain. Beverly, you know, they keep having flashbacks. That's the thing about this. Everything seems to be a flashback. You know, I mean, even in the book, it's all flashbacks. They're just thinking back. You know, and so they all remember these different incidents. They see the blood and it scares them, and, you know, they're just recounting a lot of, you know, stuff that they probably could have put in the first part, but they didn't. They just, you know, it seems like they kind of cut it up, certain things, and then they just add it in as little flashbacks in part 2. You know, it's stuff that they probably could have put in the first one, but they just didn't, and maybe they needed filler, I don't know. But anyway, it's for them it's getting late, so they decide to get some things together and go up into the room. Eddie, Ben, and Mike go upstairs to gather some stuff for everybody else in their rooms. Eddie goes to brush his teeth and rinse his mouth out and do the Eddie thing, you know, because he's a neat freak kind of guy. And then there's Ben, who goes into his room and goes into Beverly's room to get her a shawl. And then we see Mike in his room, or he's getting somebody for somebody else in their room. And all of a sudden, Henry Bowers comes out and stabs him. Now, nobody hears anything because Eddie's busy brushing his teeth, and Ben is distracted by Pennywise, who pretends to be Beverly. And, you know, as they're being distracted, Mike and Henry are fighting. Mike's been stabbed pretty bad, and after a few minutes of being distracted by Pennywise, Ben realizes what's going on. He runs away, and then they hear Mike struggling, and they go and they're able to stop Henry, who accidentally stabs himself, and then he dies. And, you know, it gets crazier after that. You know, they have to take Mike to the hospital. Ben and Beverly, they get together, they fall in love. She finally finds out that poem from part 1 was from him. Then they get the silver slugs that they use to try and kill Pennywise to begin with. They get them back from Mike, and they have to go down just to 5 of them: Bev, Ben, Richie, and Eddie. And you know, it's a lot of these scenes, you know, they're kind of silly, because some of the lines in this miniseries are kind of hokey. It's, you know, it is what it is. It's, you know, it's 1990. You know, they got to cut out all the major stuff. There's no turtle. There's probably not going to be a turtle in the movie either. You know, I don't think we're going to see it arriving like in the book. You see it arriving in a meteor or whatever. That's probably not going to be in the movie. So if you watch this miniseries, like I said, just remember these things that I'm telling you, that, you know, I'm not even giving you everything that's in it. I try to avoid a lot of spoilers. That's not really possible if you're doing a review, but still, it's, you know, you should give it a chance. But anyway, we get more flashbacks. They go down, and they find out Audra's been kidnapped in the sewers, so they go in, and then they go for the final fight against Pennywise. Eddie Kaspbrak gets killed. Audra's in a coma, but Pennywise does get killed. They escape, and it's where at the very end everybody has a happy ending. You know, and I'm not gonna try and give all the details away. There is a happy ending at the end. Even the book, it has a happy ending. It's almost identical to the end in the book. You know, Eddie gets killed. Ben and Beverly fall in love. Mike gets better, and Richie Richie, he goes on to do his thing, and Bill gets Audra to come out of her coma. So it's, it has a happy ending, and like I said, it's only like 3 hours. I don't think that it'd be a waste of time watching it. Like I said, there are a lot of movies that suck that are 3 hours, and that are out now or have come out in the last few years. And for a miniseries that came out in 1990, it's not that bad. I mean, you want a bad Stephen King miniseries, watch the Tommyknockers. That's just horrible. The Tommyknockers is probably the worst Stephen King miniseries ever. They changed everything. Not everything, but it's, man. Just read the end of the book and then watch the end of the miniseries, and you would throw your hands up in disgust. I know I did. I saw it for $5 in a store, like them Walmart bins. I said, I don't want that shit. But most of the other miniseries are really quite good. Avoid the Tommyknockers at all costs, though. That shit's horrible. Forget that. What's her name's in it? It's just, Tracy Lords. That's probably the only good thing about it, is that she's in it. But that's a horrible miniseries. Watch it. Don't watch Tommyknockers. People give it way too much shit, and then they don't give Tommyknockers shit. But it. Yeah, that's it's worth the watch. It's worth 3 hours watching. If you're gonna sit and watch, some crazy ass, comic book movie. I love comic book movies. Some of them are close to 3 hours. Why not give it a try? Don't be a Puritan. Check it out. Because it is good. You get a lot of good performances, not just from Tim Curry as Pennywise. You get Harry Anderson, John Ritter, Seth Green's pretty funny in it. Jonathan Brandis. Who's also Jonathan Brandis and John Ritter. They're the two actors that have passed on. They give pretty good performances. Pretty decent acting. Some lines are hokey. Some scenes are very hokey, but other times it's it's terrifying, scary. A lot of that. And a lot of good acting too. So don't let people. If you haven't seen it, and there are people saying, "Oh no, it's shit," or they just say, "Well, Tim Curry is the only thing that's good about it." I don't think that's true. You should give it a shot for many reasons, and Tim Curry is just one of them. And it's good. Like I said, I really like it. I don't think it's that bad. I definitely give it a thumbs up. Shadow, what do you think? It was good. Yeah, what's scarier than a Pennywise the Clown? Your face. Fuck you. All right, are you ready to spin dashes out? Yes, already. Hi, Kiba.